Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and these are my top 10 reading experiences of 2023. So welcome back if that is the case. Yes, time for the top 10 of this last year. These will be my top 10 reading experiences. So this covers ebooks, physical books, audiobooks. It covers short stories as well as full-length novels. So yeah, this is, about the experience of reading. These are just the ones that I really enjoyed the most. This was a very difficult list to do because I've read 120-ish things this year. As I say, that includes, short stories and stuff like that as well. But yeah, that's the most I've ever read in a year. So yeah, there was a lot to pick from on this, and kind of more than half of those 120-ish I rated high, 4 stars or higher. So there's some really good stuff to pick from. So yeah, so I've had an amazing year of reading. So this was a toughie to kind of actually pick 10. Right, before I get into that countdown, just to mention that I've not counted December's stuff that I've read as kind of eligible really to be considered, because I'm terrible, and I mean terrible, for recency bias. I can read something and think it's the best thing since sliced bread, and it's got to be in there or what have you, as one of the best things I've read this year. But actually I need time to just sit with stuff and actually see where it fits, see if I kind of think about it a bit more or what have you. So I've kind of kept anything out of December's reading that might have I've had that reaction to, because I don't want to kind of like, as I say, I'm terrible with recency bias, so I need to let that settle a little bit first. So right, let's get on with this top 10 then. So in at number 10 is Pet by Akweke Emezi. I think I read this in April as part of Trans Girl April, and this was an audiobook. This surprised me, this one, in terms of how affecting it was. I think maybe the audio narration helped with that. The narration for this was absolutely brilliant. The perfect voice. I will put the narrator's name up on screen because I can't quite think of it off the top of my head. But yeah, the kind of the gentle depth to this, and the darkness of it. It's dealing with some difficult stuff. It's dealing with abuse, child abuse, but it's done through a kind of fantasy / magic realism sort of way, sort of devices. It follows a young trans girl as your main character, Jam, her name is. So yeah, it was very well done, very well discussed. The ideas in it, the concepts in it, as I say, the darkness of it was just pitched right, I think, and it was just like the prose in it is beautiful, really beautiful. So yeah, that one, I really enjoyed that experience. I ripped through that quite quickly, a couple of sittings. It's not long. But I will, it's one of those where it's left a lasting impression for sure. Okay, in at number 9 then, we've got a short story, and that is I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. I'd wanted to read this one for ages. It took taken me quite some time to actually get hold of a copy, which I'd found randomly in my local used bookstore as part of a compendium of Hugo winners, and finally got to read it in September for Shorty September. Yeah, this one packs a punch. this is one where I know that I will want to read it again and again and again, not just for kind of sort of pick through and sort of marvel at the writing, which I think is brilliant in terms of how evocative it is and how like the rhythm of the language I particularly like in this, but just the ideas in it and just the big questions, things like that in it. It's for such a short amount of time on the page. I think it was about 14 pages long, something like that. It has so much in it, and it really is. It's a gut puncher. It's one of those. It really does kind of hit you. I think in terms of its bleakness, its darkness. So yeah, one that's stuck with me since September, and that I know that I want to go back to, and you know, kind of, as I say, look at from a writing perspective, but also just in terms of those bigger questions. Okay, in at number 8 then is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, another one from my September sci-fi extravaganza. This one, again, it's like, at the time, I really liked it at the time, but it's one of those that, again, it's stuck with me, and I kept thinking about it. I kept kind of going back to it. This was also an audiobook, and I'm going back to it just because I kind of, when I think about it, how intricate some of the plot elements of it is, and how it must have been a nightmare, I think, to plot out and avoid the plot holes and stuff like that, and make it kind of, you know, understandable and all that kind of stuff. And the way that Crouch weaves in the science side of the sci-fi in this, and you know, you're talking quantum physics, so it's, you know, it's theoretical physics. It's difficult stuff to, I think, to kind of like try and get your head around. And he does it really well. He didn't lose me at any point. He just kind of made me want to know more and made me ask questions of it. And his character work was solid, and you know, it was kind of, I invested in it very quickly. Yeah, I think it's a really well constructed novel, and it's, as I say, it's stuck with me more than I thought it might. And Blake Crouch has ended up on my you know, authors to read more of list in my authors project for next year as well, based on Dark Matter. So yeah, just it's a really good thrilling book. You know, it's got adventure and everything in it as well, but it does ask big questions, and it does focus, as much as it's got, you know, it's full of action and suspense and stuff like that, mystery. It does focus really well on its main character and on the characters in general and the motivations. So yeah, really good, quite accessible, thrilling sci-fi, if you're in for that kind of thing. So that is my number 8. Okay, number 7 is Several People Are Typing by Calvin Kosulki. I think that's how you pronounce the name. This was another one that I read for Transgirl April, and this was quite a surprise to me as well. It's quite short. You'd probably call it a novella, and it is essentially about a guy who ends up with his consciousness trapped inside a computer, and specifically inside kind of the Slack channels for his kind of office, you know, his office communications. It's when everybody's working from home, and you get, you know, kind of his side of things, but you also it's all told through a series of Slack messages, you know, Slack kind of meetings, if you like. So it's looking at kind of office culture, and work from home culture as well. But it's quite bonkers. It's quite surrealist, absurdist, I would say, actually, in the most part. But it's very accessible in it. It doesn't go too bonkers. It just the right amount of bonkers. But I found it hilarious. I was laughing out loud at a lot of it. Yeah, I just really enjoyed the format of this as well, with the Slack messages and how well it did in terms of kind of really getting into kind of the character relationships all through these online message boards. It's well worth a read. It's well worth a read. As I say, it's a quick read, and it was one of those which I just really got into and ripped through again. So it was highly entertaining and a really lovely surprise. Okay, number 6 then, and that is this one. Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke and Other Misfortunes by Eric LaRocca. It's really the first one, the title story, that I think is the outstanding one in this. I read this in May, and this just it won't get out of my head. the title story particularly. There was just something about this story that has obviously got its hooks in, and it's just kind of made its home in the dark little corner of my brain. And again, it's another one where this is told through a series of emails and kind of chat room posts between two women in the early 2000s, and a very, very dark, destructive relationship that develops between them. And it's one of those where, it starts reasonably dark, and it just gets darker and darker, and it just, it goes places that I didn't expect. I've read, more disturbing stuff, but there's just something about the idea of this that really unsettled me. But as I say, it stuck with me massively. I think probably on all of these lists, this is the one that kind of has got, it's wormed its way in to the little dark corner in my brain, more than anything else. So yeah, really, really good. I mean, the other stories in this are very good as well. I really enjoyed all of them, but that title one, yeah, absolutely excellent. I will be reading more Eric LaRocca next year. Okay, in at number 5, we have Ness by Robert Macfarlane and Stanley Donwood. It is basically sort of a little bit of an epic poem, a little bit of a mystery play. It's got these wonderful scratchy drawings throughout by Stanley Donwood that really help the sort of atmosphere of it. It's just that the writing from Robert Macfarlane is beautiful. It's kind of quite eerie, and yeah, it basically kind of follows sort of 5 strange forms that are connected to sort of the land, have elements of the land, and when they converge, they will become Ness, and they're there to protect the land from these strange figures. The leader of which is called the Armourer, who kind of leads this ritual with kind of nefarious intent against the land, against the world. And yeah, it's just one of those again that's like, I've never read anything like it, and it just captured me completely. I love Robert Macfarlane's writing, his non-fiction writing, and this is something very different from him. And I'm kind of a little bit in awe of him in terms of the amount of different stuff that he can do and his knowledge and things like that. So yeah, absolutely cracking little book. I thoroughly recommend this. It's one of those that I think deserves more visibility. Okay, number 4 then. The next 2 I struggled with in terms of which one should be 4 and which one should be 3. And this is what I've gone with for the moment. So in at number 4 is Nights at the Circus by Angela Carter. Again, this was quite a surprise that I liked this as much as I did, because the language in it is quite difficult for me. And I started reading it as a physical copy, but it was one that my sister had lent me, and the text was tiny, and I was really struggling, especially because that was the point at which I was waiting for an optician's test to see if I need glasses, which I do. So no wonder I couldn't read it very easily. But also it's very dense language. It's very it's got a real rhythm to it, and there's a lot of kind of run-on sentences, and there's a real poetry to a lot of the prose, and I wasn't getting into it as much. I was liking what I was seeing, but I wasn't getting into it as much. So I got the audiobook for it. Blew me away, absolutely blew me away. It was read by Adua Ando, and she was amazing with it, with the accents, with the rhythm. It was very theatrical and is a very theatrical story. And the characters are all quite, larger than life. This is magic realism at its finest. It was magical. It was a magical experience. And I was just awed by the writing. There's no way I'll ever be able to write like that. So I'm not jealous of it per se, but I am in awe of it. I am in awe of Carter's literary ability. And Carter is another one that is on that author's project for next year, of course. You'll see a theme here. So yeah, absolutely phenomenal book. And just some of the best writing, I think, that I've ever read. Okay, in at number 3 then, from another author that I'll be reading more of very, very soon, is Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. Again, it really got its hooks in, this one, and I ripped through it. I read this in April, for Old School April. And it's, it is, again, another one which has stuck with me and kind of gives me the, gives me the shivers when I think about certain parts of it. It's got some real darkness in it, but I just love the setting of it as well. I love the fact that it is the horror of domesticity. It's quite it's quite a slow burn book in terms of, like, it's not all fast-paced action, horror here, there and everywhere. It's very, very subtle in a lot of it, and it's very much undertones of darkness. But it's from the beginning, it's got that undertone running through it, and it never lets up, and the tension just kind of builds and builds and builds. And it was one of those reads that I was just in it when I was reading it. I was just completely enraptured by it, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. And so yes, Ira Levin, more Ira Levin to come in January. But yeah, absolutely brilliant classic horror, which I couldn't believe that I'd never read before. So we're down to the final 2 then, and these 2 are somewhat interchangeable in these 2 spots. I love them both endlessly, but I have made a decision on what goes where. So in at number 2 is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I read this back in February as part of my Adventures in Genre for Fantasy month, and I was shocked that not only I liked this, but that at how much I loved it. I'm not a massive fantasy fan. I'll try bits and pieces, but it's never a genre that I've been drawn to particularly. But I wanted to try some different stuff in February, and one of the ones I thought, oh well, that's very different. Legends and Lattes. That sounds, it's meant to be cozy fantasy. I'll give that a go. Not expecting to hate it, but just not necessarily thinking it was my kind of thing, but I'd give it a go. Yeah, wow, was I wrong? It is exactly what it kind of, said on the tin, essentially. It is cozy fantasy. It is high fantasy, low stakes. And it is. It's about a flipping retired lady orc who opens a coffee shop. It's like there's no way I would have thought I'd be reading something like that. And it was just perfectly done, absolutely perfectly done. The writing is really lovely. It's, as I say, it's heartfelt, it's funny. Everything works together really well. The characters are excellent. There's a good a good pace to it as well. It made it definitely made me fall in love with the characters. And there were some stakes, but as it says, it was low stakes. But that didn't matter. It kind of almost was exactly what I needed it to be without realising. It was what I wanted without realising. And so yeah, I mean, I have read the second one, Bookshops and Bone Dust, as well, which was really good. Just didn't make the top 10. But yeah, this one, such a big surprise for me that I got so much out of this. And it will be a comfort read. It's one that I will stick on, on audio, when I just want something really easy and lovely that I've listened to before, to just kind of curl up with and just, feel all snuggly with. But yes, so number 2 is Legends and Lattes. Okay then, number 1, my top reading experience of the year is A Psalm for the Wild-Built by Becky Chambers. This, similarly to Legends and Lattes, was just one of the most joyous, lovely reading experiences I've ever had. It's like the humanity shines out of this book. It's solar punk, which again is not something that I would necessarily be drawn to, but I read it as part of my sci-fi September extravaganza, and it's one of those books where it's gentle, it's charming, it's, as I say, it's a big warm hug of a book. It's hopeful, but it does more than just be a big hug of a book in terms of it being kind of cozy. There is a coziness to it, but it's got such a gentle approach to some really quite important sort of philosophy, I think. But for me, I think the fact, you've got your main character is non-binary in this, and it's hard. I think it's almost a hard one for me to describe exactly why I love it so much. I think it's because I feel seen. It makes me feel seen. If that makes sense. And that's really important. And it's done in such a beautiful way. But I just wanted to live in the world that Chambers has constructed there. In fact, I may well give up my job as an artist and go and be a tea monk, because that sounds fantastic. But yeah, it was just, again, it's one that basically immediately just found its way in and has just settled there as kind of a nice quiet friend in the background that just pops into my head pretty often, and just kind of gives me a smile. Yeah, it's just one of those books that it's a very personal reaction to it, I think, for me, but it was an important one, and I'm fingers crossed. I'm hoping that Santa might bring the second one for me for Christmas. If not, I know Santa's bringing some book vouchers. So if I'll be getting it then, and it will be one that I will break my Read What You Own challenge for, because I am desperate to read the second one in that series. So A Psalm for the Wild-Built, just for being one of the most lovely and thoughtful books that I've ever read. That gets its number 1. That makes its way onto the number 1 spot for my favourite book of the year. So that's my top 10 reading experiences of 2023. So I will leave it there for today. In fact, I will leave it there for this year. No video on Sunday this week, folks. I will be back on Friday the 5th of January, so a week today. So a very happy new year to you all. Thank you very much for watching both today and throughout the year. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving me a like and subscribing if you're not already, for more bookish ramblings coming very soon. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.